All right, so welcome everyone. So this is the virtual open house for self-learner teens. We're going to be walking through exactly what this program is, pretty much also the story behind it, why it's so important in this age, especially in the age of AI, and how exactly it can benefit your team. Towards the end, I'll walk through a few extra details because we did get extra demand on the virtual side. So just for context, we're based out of Toronto, but we had a lot of people that were interested from other countries. And so this is mostly a presentation of the program, a little bit more emphasis on the in-person side. However, I will walk through towards the end some of the differences on the virtual side, which does depend on the kind of demand that we get thereon. So yeah, let's get into it. All right. So who this is for? This is really for two kinds of teens. So one of them is the straight A student gets grades, but nothing's truly theirs. So they're mostly running out of or doing things out of compliance, and not really because they have an intrinsic reason to get better and want to do their own projects. The second one is the one that has a lot of potential, but it could be that they're maybe playing video games all the time. They're just always behind a screen. So you see that their ability is there, but not necessarily so much the motivation or the other skills that are necessary. Both are extremely capable, but both are missing the same thing, which is the skills to drive their own learning in life. So a few things. I would say I think it's 2 or 3 days ago, I was able to chat with the Canada's Minister of AI, and he actually made the same case that we did. So almost word for word. For some context, I would say it's almost a month ago. I had a 100-person event in Toronto Tech Week. It was called The Last Skill, Self-Directed Learning in the Age of AI. During that event, I made multiple of these points that Canada's Minister of AI actually made as well. The reason why it's so important is because they're relevant to learning in an age of AI. So one of the things is specific skills are decaying, while critical thinking and your ability to learn new things is mattering more than ever. So I'll get into the specifics behind that too. The internet solved access for information. So now even if you live in a third world country, regardless of where you live, you'll notice a little bit about my story too from Cuba. You're able to access information and learn anything on demand. The question then is, do you have the learning skills and learning capabilities to turn that information into actual skill? Number three is that young people need to understand how to attract opportunities in this age. So, especially if you're young and you're starting out, it's very difficult to get your foot in the door. And your ability to get opportunities, whether it's internships, whether it's job opportunities, it's also a skill. And most people are never taught that as a skill. The fourth thing then is that information on its own isn't valuable, but the perspective that you have on that information is what's valuable. And in order to get perspective and judgment, that stems from skills. So these are 4 points that I'm going to be going into right now, elaborating a little bit more on them. So specific skills are things like learning how to code in Python, learning a specific language, learning something within physics. These are specific skills, but meta skills, like learning how to learn, are skills that are the basis for all the other skills. So think things like critical thinking, learning how to focus. These are things that all the other subject-specific skills run on. And what's going on in the age of AI is that the value of a specific skill is decreasing year by year because AI is becoming more and more uncertain. So you don't really know exactly what are the skills that are going to be remaining or the skills that are going to be the most valuable in the age of AI. But what remains true is that you're always going to have to be learning new things, in which case your ability to learn is what starts to become very important. Right? So if we go back, durable edge isn't a subject, it's how fast they can learn the next one. The other thing, access to information solved it. That being said, people have never really been taught the skill of learning. And so even if you have, even if you're in an age of infinite information, the question is, how do you convert that into like actual knowledge that you can use, right? So even though in the age of AI, information is free and instant, right? Even different from the internet, because now AI can give you the exact answer to your question than before, right? And so now learning capabilities are becoming more important because of that. Right? Anyone has access to information, and not only that, access to specific and free instant information. Now the question is, what do you do with that, right? So this is a little bit about kind of the stages that things have gone through. So the internet having information available at all, AI gives it relevant to you right on the moment. Now it's about being able to have the learning capabilities to learn faster and deeper. Point number three, so going a little deeper. Knowing how to track your own opportunities is a skill. Almost nobody's taught it, but it's really a new literacy that's becoming more and more important because we're in a trust economy. So whether it's employers, whether it's companies, whether it's media, investors, etc., they hire, invest, connect, partner with people that they trust. And so within that era, especially now with AI, your ability to attract those opportunities by creating projects, networking with people, etc., are becoming more and more important, right? But most teams wait to be picked, but the skill is making the right people come to them, and that's something that can be taught as well. Elaborating on the fourth point, you will be valued based on your perspective. So perspective is valuable, information is now cheap. How do you get perspective? You need to be able to generate your own internal structure and knowledge of the world, and it has to be unique. So information, anyone can get it, but how you see things, your mental models, and how you organize things around in the world, that's what's valuable and that's what's unique. And that also connects to learning how to learn. Because if you know how to learn, then you can actually create this exact perspective that we're talking about. So what's the answer to all these points? Self-directed learning. The trainable ability to teach yourself anything on demand, faster and deeper than you could before. So not a subject, but a meta skill. Now I'm going to make a little bit the difference again between a specific capability and a meta skill. So again, these are depreciating assets. Think things like coding in Python, speaking Mandarin, designing a circuit, drafting a contract, valuable, but depreciating assets. They decay as the world moves and they have to be replaced. If you look back maybe in the past 10, 20 years, you used to be able to learn a skill once and you could keep that skill forever and it would be valuable because the world didn't change sufficiently fast enough where you had to consistently acquire new skills. But now we are in that world, and meta skills like learning how to learn, the capacity to acquire skills is becoming more important than the skills themselves, right? So that's kind of the whole argument behind this. A few of the people that have actually said that learning how to learn is the most valuable skill of the century. So Elon Musk, XAI, his company is no longer hiring exactly just engineers, but it's really just smart humans who can figure things out fast. If you look at OpenAI, another AI company, they're hiring people for their learning velocity. So people that are even self-taught and maybe non-traditional backgrounds, the fact that they can pick up things quickly is what matters because the world is changing so fast. Demis's hobbies as well. The whole premise is that he's mentioned it too is uh, what remains true is that you're always going to have to learn new things. Therefore, the most powerful skill is learning how to learn. So he's the CEO of Google DeepMind and a Nobel laureate as well. So all these companies are evaluating you for skills like your learning velocity, et cetera, not just your resume. Now, self-directed learning is the last skill, and it's the first one AI makes possible. So what do I mean by that? As AI automates specific skills, the only skill that really lasts and the one that is durable over the long run, and the one that you can actually bet on being relevant, is the skill to direct your own learning. So your ability to teach yourself anything. And not only that, AI also makes it possible. So if you look at could be 10, 20 years ago, you could teach yourself things, but you were restricted in the tools that you had. So maybe you had textbooks, even with the internet, you had the internet, but you didn't have this on-demand feedback where you could ask the AI questions, you could create practice problems, you could fill your own gaps. That's only possible with the age of AI. And it fills a lot of the issues that self-directed learning had beforehand. Now you can do with AI, right? So you don't necessarily need a personal tutor. You can, as long as you know how to use it, you can just have AI fill that gap for you, right? Okay. A few self-learning stories just so that you can see how powerful this is becoming. Number one, now I don't have a picture of him because I think it was anonymous, but it was an amateur mathematician who solved a 60-year-old open problem. So this is someone that was not traditionally trained, but just teaching himself things using the internet and AI, he was able to solve a 60-year-old math problem that nobody has solved before. Another example, so this is a high school dropout actually, who's doing research at OpenAI at 19 years old. And the way he got that opportunity was one, first being able to attract it, and number two, he was able to build his skills through self-learning, through teaching himself things on the internet, and that allowed him to get that into that position at a young age. The third one is a dog owner who outpaced the cancer literature. So this is I forget his specific name, but he's an Australian tech CEO, and what he did was very interesting. His dog had cancer, and he decided to teach himself biology and combine that with his knowledge of AI to come up with a new cure for his dog. And surprisingly, I don't know exactly the whole timeline or the time span of it, but he was able to actually develop a vaccine for his dog to cure it, which is pretty crazy just by teaching himself things through the internet. Okay, let me go on to the next one. So a few things about why self-directed learning is so important now. Learning is your whole life. So a teen will spend roughly 13 to 24 years learning in a traditional schooling environment. So think from 5 years old to 18 or to 21 or 22, or even if they're getting a master's or PhD in a traditional schooling environment. And then they keep learning for the rest of their lives. right? So whether it's through work, new tools they have to learn, curiosity, just wanting to learn things, side projects, etc. The fact is that learning fills almost your whole life, and it makes sense to get genuinely good at how to learn right now, right? While the runway in front of you is the longest. So as a team, a little bit about the story behind me. So this is me during our Toronto Tech Week event. I love learning, but I hated being forced through it. So when I was 15 years old, and we'll get into the story a little bit more here, I was going to an international school at the time. We could no longer afford the school, and so I was like, "Hey," I left the school and decided to teach myself math and physics using just free online resources. So I was inspired by a man called Scott Young. He had done in 2012 his own self-education project around computer science. So what he did was he replicated what you would typically learn at MIT's computer science degree, and he self-taught it in just 1 year. And he pretty much posted his note. I don't think his notes, but it was his practice problems and among other pieces of evidence throughout that 1 year, and that inspired me to do it on my own. So uh, the fact that I could no longer afford the school, and I was also a little bit demotivated by it because I thought that the traditional schooling system was a little bit too emphasizing on exams and not so much on learning. I was inspired by him, and I said, "Hey, I can't go to the school. I may as well teach myself things." And so I set out to teach myself the equivalent of MIT's undergraduate math and physics curriculum using only free resources with no tuition, no professor, and no guarantee it would work. Then a little bit after 2 years, I was able to actually finish it. So I was waking up at 3:50 a.m. for a little over 2 years straight, working through difficult courses in math and physics. It was brutal, but after it, I was able to finish the challenge, right? So this is the picture of me when I finished it. These are all the notebooks that I had. These are also all of the markers that I used that actually ran out of ink. And um, and yeah, and that was pretty much also the foundation for the company. So a few things that I realized from that. Um, was the following. So it was what I wish I had before, right? So a few things: self-actualized learning, learning for its own sake. So to become a master of your craft. One of the things that I noticed was when I was in traditional schooling, I was caught up in just chasing grades and approval. The shift is learning because you want it for yourself. So learning because you want to become a master of your craft, et cetera, et cetera. That's the first thing. So going from traditional learning philosophy to a self-actualized learning philosophy, learning in the pursuit of self-actualization. The second thing that I realized was that there's a real skill to learning, and it's a method that nobody's really taught, but it's something that you can pass down. It's an actual craft, right? So as you'll see in a sec, what I did was from that, besides my experience, also reverse engineering the method from hundreds of cognitive science papers, which is what we'll get into in a bit. And the third thing too is that now in the age of the internet, you can reach almost anyone. So whether it's through DMs, through emails, through finding them at events, and attracting opportunities is one of the most important things you can do. Right? It doesn't matter how good you are if you can't attract opportunities, you're not going to get what you want, and it's not something that school teaches. So these are the really three main things that kind of led me to create this. Right? So again, a little bit more context. My experience along with the different research papers are the things that made this the foundation for self-learners, right? So you can see me here kind of like at the event, right? And yeah, again, uh, based on my story, over 500,000 people were reached from this, and we were featured on, I think, 50 plus news outlets. So like CO Times, AP News, Business Insider, and more. Okay, now a little bit about self-learners. So this is going into more what we're trying to do. We're a small company building one thing, people who can teach themselves anything for the rest of their lives. It started from a stubborn observation. Almost no one is ever taught how to learn. We're handed information, tested on it, and assumed to have absorbed meta skill nobody ever named. Most of us didn't. We built this to make the meta skill explicit. 5 pillars from the cognitive science of learning, 50 techniques inside them, and the cohort doing the actual reps in public on a real project. Right? I was just checking to make sure that nobody else joined yet. Okay. In public on real projects. The ability to learn is not a gift, it's a craft, and crafts can be taught, practiced, and handed down. That's what we're doing here. All right. Let's go on to the next one. Okay, so a little bit now going into what self-directed learning actually is, and very interestingly, this is something that's been studied for tens of years, so decades. It really goes back to Malcolm Knowles in 1975. He defined self-directed learning as a process in which the learner takes the initiative, with or without the help of others, in diagnosing their learning needs, setting goals, curating resources, and designing their own curriculum, as well as monitoring and evaluating their own performance. So in other words, you stop being a passenger and you start being the driver of your education, right? So a few main things: setting learning goals, curating resources, designing your curriculum, and then being able to monitor and evaluate and actually do the learning side of things. That's from the definition. Then from hundreds of research papers, I think it's over 700 now, probably thousands at this point, I was able to reverse engineer the main pillars around self-directed learning, right? So these are metacognition, encoding, retention, deliberate practice, and schema revision. So I'll go through each one in just a sec. But together, they're meant to span every cognitive operation that a learner is going to exercise. So we can think about what are all the things that a learner is going to have to do to learn something. And these are the main 5 things that they're going to have to do. So they're going to have to, number one, yes, actually, before I get into that, this is a little bit of the flow behind it, which we'll reference in just a sec. But the first one is metacognition. So this is something known as thinking about thinking. So if you imagine like an inner observer that you have, in order for you to learn well, you need to be very self-aware. You need to understand what learning states you're in, what your cognitive state is. And that's where metacognition comes in. This is something that dates back not even to learning, but just to other things in life too. So if you think of things like journaling, or even philosophers and even emperors like Marcus Aurelius, they used to have exercises of journaling, etc., to build that inner observer and that inner self-awareness, which is part of it. There's more than just self-awareness, of course. But that's really what metacognition is, right? Because if you can't really observe your learning, you cannot direct it. So if you go back to this point, metacognition is really like learning is the meta skill of everything, but metacognition is the meta skill of learning. So it sits underneath all the other 5 pillars. All right. Okay. Let me go back into. I think there was some in the chat. I just want to check. Hello. Okay. Yeah. That was a little bit before. I know we just go straight into it. Okay. Next one. Yeah. So you can see here. There's a few things. So you're monitoring, and then you're from that monitoring that you're doing. So that inner observations, you're controlling your learning. So then you take some kind of action based off of it. Onto the next pillar. So the next one's encoding. So this is very important. It's actually the longest pillar in the curriculum, which you'll get a sense for. So it's how information actually enters the mind. So most people have never really been taught how to properly process information at a deep level, and this is where encoding comes in. So it's really how do you make information stick, and how do you also reorganize it in your brain so that you have this kind of feeling of mastery and this feeling of like, okay, my knowledge is fluid, I can move around it, etc. It's really where the whole declarative and like conceptual side of learning comes in and is very important, but hardly ever taught. Then retention. So this is just making it survive. So once information comes in and is in your long-term memory, how do you actually make it survive over time? So oftentimes we'll forget things. What are some strategies that we can use to make sure that we actually remember it and maintain that knowledge, right? That's what this second pillar is about. Then deliberate practice. Once we have learned and we're able to retain it, now we actually have to put it into action to practice, right? So that's where deliberate practice comes in. The key difference here is the word deliberate. So the reason the word deliberate is here is because it's intentional, right? So that's the difference between an expert and a novice, is both in how, and not just how much they're practicing, but how they're practicing. So there's a great quote that says perfect practice, or it's a practice makes perfect, but in reality it's perfect practice makes perfect, right? So it's not just in volume, but in being in very intentional about your practice, right? So schema revision, this is kind of the most abstract one, I would say. But once we learn, we practice, etc., we have a certain way of seeing the world, or a certain way of understanding different things. And this is where schema revision comes in, because oftentimes those understandings or misconceptions can be incorrect. And so the whole point is we should be able to consciously revise those schemas to update our model when reality is telling us that it's incorrect. And this is going to allow us to refit, pretty much rebuild our model and fix it so that it aligns with how an expert thinks instead of with how a novice thinks, right? So you can see here it can be like a flawed model, and this is like rebuilding it and revising it. It's pretty uncomfortable, but it's a necessary part of becoming a master. Okay, now from those 5 pillars, there's also 50 plus techniques within the program inside each one. You'll actually get into, in just a second, I'll walk you through that a little bit more detail. But from these 5 pillars, we pulled out the main methods that you're going to have to actually use. So these are specific concrete things that we're going to teach your team. And also, when we actually show you in a bit the dashboard with the lessons, you'll notice every single module is going to be referencing the learning science literature. So this is also something that we take seriously. So all the techniques, everything has a corresponding like theory and evidence behind it. Now, a few things. This is the kind of the main part because the program teaches these three main tracks. So self-actualization, self-directed learning, and opportunity attraction, right? The gap usually isn't ability, it's three skills almost no one is taught. So plenty of teens have the potential and still aren't using it. The missing piece is really talent. It's that no one ever taught them how to want it, how to learn it, and how to be found for it, which is why we built this program around these three main things. So self-actualization, which is becoming your best self, becoming the person who does the work. Then from that is self-directed learning. So how do you build any skill on demand? And then after that is once you have that, how do you create projects and turn your proof into opportunities via opportunity attraction? So if you have these three things, whether it's something like a business, whether it's something like a job, whether it's like just a partnership that you want, these three things are the most essential for success in any endeavor. So self-actualization, it starts by changing your internal reality before we teach any like before techniques actually work or um, before techniques become the most relevant thing, you actually have to become the kind of person who shows up. So this is where things like focus, habits, mindset, etc. become important. Some of the things that we teach inside is self-actualized learning. So learning for the sake of mastery, right? These are all intrinsic reasons, not extrinsic. So learning because you want to get better, you want to know more, etc. That's what self-actualized learning is about. Mastering your internal state. So oftentimes life uh, like shoves us in different directions. So maybe there's different emotions like okay, you're tired or you want to like you have an urge to get distracted. There's different things that are going to kind of bump you off course. The question then is how do you master your internal state so that you can still stay on course, right? And also how do you change your identity? So these are some examples of things that we're going to be teaching within self-actualization, right? Because once you're the right person, you build the engine. Then self-directed learning. This is the engine that builds skills. Skills are what the world demands and pays for, and self-directed learning is the engine that produces skills on demand for the rest of your life. So if you have the engine, then no single skill is ever out of reach, right? It's the part that made school easier, not harder. School teaches you what to learn. This teaches you how to learn, which, as we mentioned, is becoming ever more important in an AI age. Number three, opportunity attraction. So how do you turn what you can do into doors that open? So if you think about it, businesses are constantly marketing their products to win customers. In this case, you are your product. So your projects, your skills, your character. These are things that people find valuable, but very rarely does anyone learn how to turn those things into an actual opportunity. So most teenagers wait to be picked. We teach the opposite, learning how to build in public, show your work, and invest in relationships so that the right opportunities start finding you. I like this great quote that's luck is when opportunity meets preparation. The question is then, how do you engineer opportunity? Right. So self actualization and self directed learning is the preparation component. And then the opportunity component is where opportunity attraction comes in. Right. It's a skill almost no one is taught. Marketing what you can actually do so it reaches the right people. A few things around this, just so that you can see how important this is becoming. People aren't asking for your resume anymore. They're asking about what you can do. So just some examples. Layla Hormozi, the founder of a $1 billion company, she doesn't screen for resumes anymore. She screens social media profiles. So your resume doesn't matter as much as it used to. Another example, Jack Dorsey, the founder of Twitter, he didn't send a resume to get his first job. He found a security flaw in the company's website, emailed them about it, and they hired him on the spot. Another example, Brian Chesky, the best people I hire come from referrals, word of mouth, and meeting talented people building cool stuff. So if you look at it, this kind of process of just spamming resumes, or again, doesn't have to be resumes, it can be anything that you're trying to get an opportunity for. You have to be more creative, and you have to do things like building in public. How do you actually put your thoughts out there in social media so people can see? How do you send the right messages so that people are interested in what you have to say? How do you invest in relationships? How do you go to events? Like these types of things are becoming much more important in an age of AI. Right. So going back a little bit, employers, internships, media, investors, etc., and partners, they all care about one thing, which is what can you actually do. So three parts and one complete self-learner is the person, the engine, and then the doors. Right. Self-actualization, self-directed learning, and opportunity attraction. Apart, each of them is useful. Together, they make a complete self-learner who compounds for life, and a teenager who starts now has the longest compounding curve in the room. So a few things on why the learning method is different than other programs that you might have seen. It's not just a one trick or a hack. It's meant to be a system that spans all cognitive operations someone's going to be doing. So all five pillars. It's not just quick tips. It's a full personalized system, and you have to really remold your brain to think in this way. But once you do, you're going to have outsized returns on it. It's again not random internet advice. Everything is synthesized from hundreds of learning science papers and cited in the modules. And it's not just a hack that you regurgitate. We actually teach you how to think about your own learning so that you understand when and what to apply in each case. The goal isn't to hand a teenager a trick, it's to make them genuinely good at learning. Now, this is going a little bit more into the cohort program. Before I go into it, if anybody wants to unmute or ask any questions, that could work too. Mm-mm-mm. Okay, let's keep going. So going into the actual program. So really, to put it simply, the goal is the following. You design your own learning project driven by internal motivation, and we help you attract opportunities and grow towards self-actualization while you build a personalized learning system and project around a topic you genuinely care about. So that's really the goal, to put it simply. Now it's a little bit long because it's multiple things, but that's kind of the one paragraph statement. So three tracks running in parallel: self-directed learning, self-actualization, and opportunity attraction. The journey. So this is kind of the 34 weeks over various stages. So in total, it's around 8 months. First, we start with the orientation session, the exploring curriculum design. Then we go through the 5 pillars in that sequence. It's also sequenced in that way for a particular reason. Then we have what's called the project presentation. This is where you're going to be spending 2 weeks to prepare your project and actually get it ready to present at what's called the Self Learner Summit, which we'll get into in just a sec. So first, we get your team fully set up. So onboarding, make sure nobody starts lost. The very first session is about exactly that, making sure they get access to our dashboard, they meet their peers, they have an overview of the 8 months, and they get set up on various tools. Then within that same week, we have another session where they're going to be getting a personalized assessment, which measures two main things. So how your team learns, which pinpoints their learning ability, and also the inner side. So things like motivation, focus, habits, mindset, these things as well is in the assessment. We do it very meticulously because we want to have good data on the before and after of your team. And so that becomes a measurable baseline. This is what a week actually feels like. So there's going to be multiple things that you'll notice here, but one of the things is 2 weekly sessions, 60 minutes each in person. Now, if this is the virtual program, there's going to be a few differences there, but we're also going to have weekly sessions there. This is the structure of the session. So there's wins, there's Q&A and recap, there's breakout, and then there's recap and goals. So the wins is just open by sharing wins. That's a good way to get the momentum going. Then there's Q&A and recap, so questions answered throughout the week and specific observations that I've noticed. Could be other questions or it could be just some gaps that I've noticed in other people. Then breakout, so this is where we practice and discuss, and we also, as learning specialists, we can give you feedback on you applying a certain technique. Then it's again a recap and goals for the next session. A very important part of this is that we're setting goals for the next session as a kind of accountability measure too. So a few things too. Between the weekly sessions, we're going to be doing virtual co-working. So this is more for you to work on your learning project. So you can use it to study things, and also you can use it to just work on what's called your main project. So your learning project is the set of things that you're going to learn, and your main project are the things that you build from what you learn. So think about learning Python. That's the learning project, and then building an app is the project from that learning that you're going to be creating. So the in-person sessions are held in spaces built to inspire. So think design studios, creative workspaces, university halls, etc. The goal is to make sure it does not feel like a classroom. So I think that energy is something you can't fake. So something like this gives you a lot of inspiration and motivation to actually learn, and that also makes it a lot more fun. This is a little bit around the command center. So everything's going to be hosted inside a dashboard, which we'll walk you guys through in just a second. But it's pretty much everything here: the lessons, dashboard, the learning profile, the community, etc. Yeah, so always on virtual co-working, we're using a specific platform where you can go virtually. You can drop in at any time and work on your learning project. You also get rewarded for doing so through XP and other things. A few reasons why this is valuable. So the people you'll grow with, this is a small selected vetted community of ambitious young learners chosen for drive, not credentials, and screened so it stays a serious and safe space. So these can be friends, partners, collaborators, co-founders, and more, right? And a network that you'll have for the rest of your life. How it starts. So for the in-person, you get a box of real things. So when you join, you receive a physical learning box. This is going to contain several physical artifacts. So the curriculum, the journal, the stickers, the pen, the card deck, etc. Just for context, this is a mock-up, so the actual box will look a little different, but roughly the same. Also, merch custom size. So you're sent a merch pack custom size to you. Self-learners apparel. It's really a daily reminder for you to keep learning and growing, and to have that desire to learn. Mentors within reach. So besides the learning specialists, you're going to have mentors within reach, and we're continually adding more and more mentors to our roster. So these are people that are handpicked by us and curated by us that you have structured access to throughout the program, and that you can reach out directly to, send messages, and book calls for real guidance on your project. So these are domain specific mentors, which means if you're learning something around AI, if you're learning something around medicine, if you're learning something around like some invention, patents, if you're learning something around cybersecurity or around building a company, these are people that can help you on the domain specifics. Then we have learning specialists. So learning specialists are 24, pretty much are the people that help you with your learning. So your learning support. So it could be implementing different techniques, that type of support. You get 24/7 messaging access, where you can message any specialist throughout the program, and you get a 20-minute one-on-one call with the learning specialist every month, right? So again, these are focused on the learning side of things, not the domain specifics. So around the 5 pillars, specific implementations, feedback, etc. And all of this builds towards what's called the Self Learner Summit. So at the Self Learner Summit is towards the end of the program, and it's a multi-day event where we're going to be doing workshops, activations, and more importantly, you're going to be showcasing your full journey that you went through over the 8 months, typically specifically on what you learned and what you built from what you learned. So how to begin? Apply. After the application, we're going to be doing a short interview. Then after you get accepted, you're going to be onboarded, and you're going to be reaching the first orientation session, and then weekly sessions begin. So you can apply at selflearners.io/apply, but I'll also put in the chat kind of like the link too. So mm, 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 okay, go here. So let me go back. Okay, yeah. So that's pretty much the structure. The point with this isn't to be like I would say like elitist. Like the whole point is really just we just want to select for curiosity, some level of ambition, and make sure it's a right fit. That's the whole point with this kind of process. So again, application, interview, acceptance, onboarding, orientation, and then the weekly sessions begin. So a little bit about how to pay. So this is the for the in-person program. It can be billed monthly. So 8 months total, $799 per month. This is Canadian, and or you can prepay and save 15% off, so almost $1,000. Now, no one should be pressed out of learning how to learn. So if cost is the only thing between you and your family and the cohort, talk to us. We set aside need-based assistance and flexible payment plans every cohort, so you can reach out. And yeah, now going again, summarizing pretty much everything that's included, the personalized assessment in the beginning, the eight month guided curriculum, which by the way, you guys can send me an email at diegovera@selflearners.io, and I'll send you the curriculum so that you can see it in more depth. That's the learning curriculum. Then we have the weekly sessions, the 50 plus techniques and drills, right? The live learner dashboard, which we'll get into in just a sec. The co-working sessions, monthly workshops around self-actualization and opportunity attraction. So that's how those two tracks are delivered through monthly workshops, while as the learning tracks are more through the lessons, drills, and in-person sessions. A curated mentor network, 24/7 access to learning specialists, opportunity and intro engines, so in the case of opportunity attraction, besides the workshops, we're also handing people specific tools from our partners that are at no cost. These are tools that are going to help you with your opportunity attraction. So if we go back over here, right? Packaging your work, social capital, and building a personal brand. These are the main things we're going to be teaching. But we're also handing you tools that are going to help you outreach and get opportunities, as well as access to our network as well. So besides the mentors that are going to be helping you on domain specifics, we also have a network of people that you can contact and that they can actually track your learning progress and your builds, your learning projects, your main projects throughout the 8 months. So these can be recruiters, etc. These are people that can, through the dashboard, are going to get access to your profile, which you'll see in a sec too when Elliot goes into it. So those are other ways that we're making sure that you get opportunities too. So back to it. Yeah, this is everything that's included: the physical parts, the learning box, the merch, etc. And again, there's a 30-day no conditions, unconditional guarantee. So you can join the cohort, and if it's not the right fit within 30 days, you get a full refund, no friction after that. But it's a commitment to cohort. So if you do leave, we're more cautious with accepting people back, just because this isn't something that you can just go in and out of. But yeah, Now, a few things, even if you never join, these are some things that I want you guys to be able to take with you. So a few principles on how to learn better for your team, and also a way to start having them design their own curriculum. So one principle, build on prior knowledge. So if you actually look at what learning is and how learning science defines learning, it's actually linking new information to what's already stored in long-term memory. So, with that idea in mind, this is a principle that you're always going to want to use. So, think about how you can link new information into something you already know. This is why analogies, metaphors can be so useful for learning, right? Because it's literally what learning is, and learning builds on itself. It's like a snowball. So, this is why this is a very valuable one, right? So, if you think about isolated facts, they're lost, they're forgettable, but if they're linked to multiple things and they're linked to what you know, they're retrievable and durable. Learn actively, not passively. So, there's research on something called deliberate difficulties, which is literally what the word says. So if when you're learning, there is a certain optimal level of difficulty that you should be experiencing in your brain, which is like, okay, it's effortful, I'm thinking, that is a good sign that you're learning. So effort's the point, not the enemy. So make sure that as you're going throughout things, like pause, process it, stop, think. These are things that lead to better learning versus you just like going through a text and reading it, right? Even though it's a little friction, it's going to be a lot better. Now, practicing the real thing. This is more on the practice side. So I've given this example around like doctors, but it can apply to many other things. There is something called transfer appropriate processing, which is the idea that how you learn something is going to affect how well you can apply it in certain conditions. So I'll elaborate that. So, for example, in the case of a doctor, let's say that I'm training to be a doctor. There's two methods I could use. I could either use flashcards, so recalling facts specifically, or I can maybe use real diagnosis. So it could be a live situation where I have to reason and decide, right? Now, the idea is that we want to be able to practice things that are more aligned to how we're going to be tested on that situation. So if it's me doing diagnosis, I want to make sure that my practice is aligned with me doing diagnosis. Now, if it's a test, maybe flashcards are better, but it's really more making sure that you're conscious about what you're optimizing for when you're practicing things, right? You want to make sure that what you practice is as close to the real thing as possible. Now, those are the three principles, but how can you actually design your own curriculum today, even if you never join? A few things: know your outcome. So be very specific, set a goal. It could be a problem you want to solve, it could be a specific thing you want to learn, a project you want to do, a question you want to answer. So know your outcome, also know why. So know your outcome, know why that outcome is relevant to you. Like if you want to build an app, like why, what's the goal there as well? Then from that, you reverse engineer concepts that you need to learn to be able to reach that outcome and resources to learn those concepts from. And then you also set, okay, once you have the outcome, the concepts, and the resources to learn it from, you need to have a checklist that shows you, hey, if I can do this, it means I've mastered it. We call it the mastery checklist. So these are the main things that you need for your product. And then once you do that, start building things, right? So once you learn that, use builds as your proof. So if I learn something around medicine, maybe I can build like an interesting app around like medical data or something like that, right? This is really the full loop that can really get you started around self-directed learning. So a few things around the Q&A, and then we'll get into Elliot also going into the dashboard and modeling and just kind of showing you guys everything that's included there. So the age requirements, the team program is built for ages 13 to 17. So the cohorts grouped and the assessment personalized, so the experience fits where each learner actually is. How is this different from a tutor or an online course? A tutor helps with one subject. A course hands you content for one topic. However, this builds the underlying skill of learning itself. So your team gets better at every subject this year and for life, instead of renting help one class at a time. Will this help with school? Yes, directly. The five pillars are how learning actually works. So the same methods that let you master a field on your own make schoolwork click faster and stick longer. We don't compete with school. We make a student better at it. Really, again, it all depends on your goals. So if this is something that you want to use to improve for school, that's fine. If it's something you want to use to get opportunities in different ways, etc., that's also fine, right? How much time does it take? About 5 to 7 hours a week, and most of that is actually applying the techniques to the schoolwork you already have. So it largely replaces inefficient studying rather than adding to it. That's a better way to do the work, not a second pile of work. Does my team need to be a top student already? No. We look for driving curiosity, not grades. So the assessment meets each learner exactly where they're at, and an ambitious team who has more to give is exactly who this is built for. If he's just smart, doesn't he already not need this? Intelligence and the ability to systematically acquire competence are two different things. What a smart team picks up on instinct is nowhere near the actual ceiling. That gap only closes with a deliberate research back system. And this is what that is. What if we miss a session or go on vacation? No problem. Every live session is recorded and uploaded to our platform. The virtual co-working stays open online, so regardless of where they are, they can tap into that. But if you do miss a session, your team can watch the recording and complete the worksheets on their own time. But we do urge families to miss as little as possible. They're the live in-person sessions because the live in-person sessions are where a lot of the real work happens. Is the community safe? It's a small vetted members only space. So learners are screened, mentors are handpicked and curated and interviewed to make sure that they're perfectly safe, and contact is all structured. So when you see the dashboard, you're going to be able to get access to the messages that they have, and also the recordings with the mentors are going to be stored. So it's built to be a protected environment for ambitious young people. Yep, and that would be the final slide. So I'm actually going to go over to Elliot so he can walk through the actual dashboard in just a sec. And one more thing, because I think I didn't build on this as much, is going back to the opportunity attraction side. We're building out a full pipeline of recruiters and also other people within our network. And what's going to happen is that as you build your learning projects and as you build your main projects, so things like actual tangible things, not just learning, um, people within our network in the dashboard, they're going to get access to the projects that you have and your profile. And from that profile, that can actually get you opportunities at companies. It can get you other types of opportunities as well. So that's something we're also building into it that I realize I didn't hit as hard on this, but like recruiters, investors, and collaborators can look you up, your social profile, and your proof of work. Again, because they care less about credentials and more about what you can actually do. And that's shown through real projects, right? And that's kind of the goal behind this. So I'll hand it over to Elliot where he can share go through the dashboard and
Yeah,
the parent view and also the student view. Yes, I'm gonna stop sharing.
awesome. Thank you so much, Diego. Yeah, can you see my screen?
Yeah.
Yep, awesome. So this is what your teenagers will be able to see opening the cohorts dashboard. And really what we want to build is build a system that Diego and I really wanted when we were learning and our own projects and building our own projects. So right now we'll see the community view where you can actually compete with other people in the cohort and then also see what their profiles and you can even message them in the inbox. Connect is where Diego was talking about where you can connect with mentors, learning specialists, and network, where you can reach out to them and even book a call, depending on what you want to be. If you want to be for accountability or career maps, for example, then you could, filter for those and reach out to the mentors that will help best help your project. And of course, there's DMs where you can message people and within your cohort or channels, which you can talk about things that you're working on and also text individual people. And this is the dashboard. So the dashboard is the main view that you can see how you are doing, like your learning activities. You can set yourself goals. There's learning goals, project goals, and networking goals. And then also keep up to date with the upcoming deadlines and if there's any other updates that we will post. And then here's where you can see the view of what are some deadlines that might be coming up or events that be coming up so to ensure that you're staying on time and you don't forget anything. Learning profile is where the student can actually start updating their profile and manage what people and recruiters and mentors can see. Um, on projects, you can update your project, your main project, like Diego was talking about. But also below is the learning project, which we'll go on later on. Learn in public is where you can actually post updates about your projects. You can either post, which we recommend on LinkedIn and Instagram, and link it to here so that underneath your project, you can see, or recruiters or people looking at your project, you can see where else they've posted things and updates. And then here's where you can set yourself goals and stuff like that. Here's a learning project. So you can actually create a new learning project. And Dave and I have really worked hard on how to build this learning project in the best way possible to guide and actually build good projects. So there's a couple ways that we can go through that, but we can go through one that I've already committed. And you can select subdomains. So you can add domains like smaller knowledge items. You can add resources and then also mastery checklists. Overall checklist that you want to complete during
Could
your
you add maybe some domains and some knowledge components just to kind of see? So domains
yeah.
are meant to be more general. So if you're learning something, there's always the main like topics. So if you think about something in, I don't know, like it could be biology, it could be like, okay, genetics, then there's like evolution. Those are like domains. And then knowledge components are specific concepts or specific facts, specific skills that are within those domains, right? And then you see you have the resources. You can pick which kind of mode the resource is, like is it an article, a video, etc. Give the
Mhm.
title, put the link, and also the mastery checklist is really just a list of observable behaviors that show you, hey, did you master this or not, right? And you can also see the kind of percentage at the very top that kind of shows, okay, like through all the knowledge components, you can kind of keep track of what you mastered and what you have.
Yeah, exactly. And it shows the checklist, your domains, and your knowledge item, which is all be showed to the recruiters or keeping track of how the project is going. Then we can go to lessons where we'll be posting all of the lessons and drills that we will be doing. Like we said, there's over 5 phases or even more than 5 phases. So every single time that we start a new phase, we'll expand and unlock one of these modules, and you can take a look at the lessons and drills and practice on your own time. This really will help you to the students to learn even outside of the classrooms or outside of the calls because that's what's really important because they might need help when when we're not in person. Yeah. And then the coolest thing, in my opinion, is the Learning Copilot. So we can actually go see, this is one of my past chats, where it has access to all of the all the lessons, where you can actually like, what are all the lessons? And you can click on them and it'll open up the right one and then be able to help you give recommendations and have the full knowledge of your student. So the main thing is being able to understand what the student is learning and how to learn it, and then giving the best recommendations to help motivate and to push your student to do the best possible.
And just for context, the Learning Copilot is trained on hundreds of well, my articles, trained on my articles, hundreds of research papers, also on the lessons and the live recordings. So it's kind of like having my brain in your pocket with the Learning Copilot, not just my brain, but like literally the brain of learning science research. And also, it's going to be trained on what are good creative projects that you can create as a body of work. So these are things that you can show to employers, things you can show to get internships, to get other opportunities. So it's meant to help on those aspects, on the learning component, but also on like on your projects and that type of thing, right? Do you want to also go into the so before you get to the parent view, go into
Oh,
the how it might into like the learning profile? I think you might have already done it, but just maybe
yeah.
explain a little bit about how like recruiters can see how it connects to like recruiters seeing your your whole like profile and like as a way to keep track of what you're doing.
Yeah, so there's a lot of different views. There's like a mentor view, there's recruiter views, there's parents views, what we'll go on later on. And based on those things, we decide to what to show. For example, with a mentor view, we want to show the individual goals that the student might have so that mentors can give better recommendations. I would tweak this goal because I think that you might be better to focus on this week, right? While recruiters, they might just want to see the learning progress during the 8 months. And I think that's something that's very valuable for recruiters because it's not only tracking what they're learning currently and what their current status of learning is seeing the velocity of the students learning throughout the 8 month program. Which is really, really beneficial. So you can see the learning projects, the main projects they're working on, but also how fast learning, and then the overall skill that we're talking about, they're learning how to learn, which how well are they able to learn new things even after they get hired, which is super important.
Yeah, and also like their social media. So it's really meant to give them a 3D overview of who you are as a learner. And this is gonna help them because you're gonna not just learn how to attract opportunities. Our goal is to also hand you opportunities through this exact thing, right? So whether it's employment opportunities, whether it's internships, media, like any opportunity, people that are interested in that will be able to follow you throughout your journey and look at your projects, your learning, all of that. Also, could you
Awesome.
one last thing before you go into it? Also, like maybe the resources and the help section, like just to kind of go over that last part, and then we'll
Yeah,
get
of
on to
course.
the parent view.
Yeah, so resources is going to be really well documented to ensure that even within the dashboard, people know how to use the dashboard and how to use it and how to to was the best practices of using it as well. So we also have lots of documentation and resources around the guides that we have, the learning tools that we have access to. Here are the partnerships that we have. Help Center as well is really exactly how the dashboard works and stuff like that. And then they can also give feedback and to us whenever they need to. Awesome. So now I'm going to stop sharing my screen so I can go to the parent view.
Yep.
And here we go. Can you see my screen? Can you see my screen? All good? Okay, awesome.
Yep.
So for parents that have multiple children, we need to ensure that they can have access to many, um, to both like all of your children that you have. And here is the view that you have for your student. So you'll be able to see the active days, how the student is doing overall, the progress, more in depth, the pillar of mastery, which is really what we try to push and what we try to teach at the end of this course. So it's a really great way that you can keep track of how consistent they're doing, and we can track how many times their attendance within the work sessions and stuff like that. If we're having a lot of weekly meetings where we're doing, people can just come in and work together, then we can also track attendance on that as well. Then you can go to lead learning, where you can really go more in depth on tracking your students' learning profile. So exactly what are they learning about, how their project is going, seeing what they're working on. You can see their goals that they have and stuff like that, where you can see more in depth, which I think is super interesting to see what your kids are working on and stuff like that. Another big point, which Diego will speak on more, is being able to track the messages and recording meetings. So a big thing is that if your student wants to record meetings or book calls with mentors, we ensure that all of those are being recorded and including all the messages and stuff like that. So ensuring that everyone is staying safe and that everyone can get the best value of it.
Yeah, exactly. So the goal with this is that, again, just giving an overview of it. So on the case of the messages, you're going to be able to see like the messages that they send to other students and then to mentors. And also you're going to be able, because they're booking meetings with mentors. So mentors are domain specific experts that can help them on their main project. Learning specialists are learning experts that can help them on the learning side of things. And the mentor meetings are also going to be recorded just for safety reasons.
Yeah. Otherwise, that's it. Whereas you can go back and see all of your students or all your teens. There you go.
Perfect. Okay, so that would end it for this open house. Just a few things. On the applying side, as I mentioned, there's an application process. So you can go to selflearners.io/apply. If you have any more questions, you can either reach me on social media at Real Diego Vera or send me an email at hello@selflearners.io, and I'll get back to you with any of that. Also, if people want the specific learning curriculum, for those that are more interested, we can also send that to you through email so that you can have a look. Okay. This is being recorded, so everybody's going to get access to this recording. After this, I'll send it to either your email or however it was that you registered, and you'll be able to have a look over it. All right. But
Awesome.
that's it for this. All right.